So we've got our update through. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to build a scorecard, because we need to have a scorecard for this. We want to be able to track what's going on. And we're going to investigate again and have a deeper dive into some of the stuff that we get now we've got a scorecard. But to prepare a scorecard, we need to write some DAX measures, don't we? So we need to review what we've got, see some challenges that we're going to face with parkrun, and then actually work through and build a solution for it so we can have our scorecard. Yeah? Let's jump on over and see what that all looks like in the Power BI service. So here we are in the Power BI service, looking at what we've got now in our Jesmond parkrun, what's going to be our Northeast parkruns data set. A couple of things. So first off, obviously, we've now mentioned, or you've hit issue number 1, okay, in terms of this is in a Jesmond parkrun workspace, because that's where we started. So issue number 1 is always going to be in terms of, do we need to, as report growth or report usage expands and changes, do we need to change workspace names? You know, should we be trying to future-proof our workspace names? There's no hard or fast rules for it. In terms of renaming a workspace, it's not as high risk as you would think, given that behind the scenes, Power BI is using GUIDs, so globally unique identifiers for everything. So you can see that in, oh, the wrong page. You can see that if we go here, we can see there's a GUID in there, and that's related to this. There's nothing, you know, not related to anything else. It's related to this report pack that we have. So we kind of, you've got that, you know, in terms of accessibility to it. This is again one of the, Power BI is really insecure. The GUID, yeah, you could have snipped it from my thing, tried to go to it, but it's tied to my tenant. So you would need credentials for my tenant to get into it. We've got obviously other tenant security features that you can put in place around Azure. I'm not going to go into what we've got turned on here. I'm not that silly, but yeah, it's not. Oh, okay. What I've done as well is we've now got this feature here, and I'm still part of it. I get why they've done it. I think in a real world environment, this is where my usage of Power BI just falls apart with this. And so in a real world situation, I would have one workspace for data sources. Okay? And we would tie a workspace to source location or source system. For it is typically what I would say. Bring those in. Those then become your data engineering workspaces. That this is where our data engineering team is going to work from. We have a stores location where we have different data models or different semantic models. And we can see we've got kind of the Newcastle parkruns. This is one of the data marts that Power BI is scrapping. So this is now going to be retired in a month or so. We've got these as we went through and built different stages of them just to test and see what was going on with it. But we've got our core ones that we will use. So our core ones are obviously our Jesmond Parkrun 2.0, got our Newcastle parkruns, and we've used the Northeast parkruns as well. So we've got, these are core ones that we use and we actually look at. But we're able to put more in there. Now, the nature of Power BI and the nature of semantic models is that you should be connecting multiple report packs to those. Okay, so you see this is the semantic model. We go to visualize, we can see these are the visuals that relate to the various models. And this is then where kind of problems and issues and everything like that falls in with Power BI. So we'll come back, we will talk about this a bit today because I really want to cover some things with it. But just be aware, kind of multiple reports connecting to the semantic model. So potentially, instead of multiple reports in the same workspace as a semantic model, it's multiple reports in different workspaces with different permission sets around them as well. There's a lot going on with this. And obviously on top of that, then you've got your visualization layer of apps. Currently, we've got what are going to be called, what are still workspace apps. We're bringing in org apps, or org apps are coming in. There are some questions I have around org apps, even though they're still in preview. I am sure I saw that a release date for them when they were going GA. I can't have done though. I don't have any NDA signed with Microsoft, so I wouldn't be getting any information like that. But if I've got this vague feeling it's imminent. anyway, but there's some gotchas around that, and there's some things we need to be thinking about, and there's some things as well that are kind of going on with the Copilot side that I'm questioning. I'm not aware of. I'm questioning. Okay, so I'd love feedback from you guys down below in terms of what you're seeing with that side of it. But we'll follow later on in the video, work out where that is. And then I've created this new one, this general, which is where I've put the scorecard. So I've got a scorecard report that I've written, which is just where the measures are going to come from for that. And we've got a scorecard now, okay? And then obviously now the latest thing that seems to have come through in Power BI, which I am a big fan of, really am a big fan of, probably far too much of a fan for what it is that there's now a semantic model related to that scorecard. So because the scorecard, if we look at here and we say, right, we've got total participation, that's the all finishers one. And we've got the registered participation, which is probably the more interesting one. So we've got the registered participation. We can look at it and see, well, for Newcastle, what I was thinking is we could expand that and put every parkrun under Newcastle, every parkrun on the Gateshead in there as well. And you can then drill up, drill down, see what's going on. But then I was like, well, that's all very well and good, isn't it? Having that as an overall and seeing what's happened overall. But what we potentially want to do is have a look at that in a more granular kind of a way, something that's more, we can perceive more simply, more easily, I think, and more comparatively as well. You know, what happened last week versus this. So what I've done is, as I've got here, this is the overall page where we can say, you know, again, this is really what I used to build the scorecard. And again, this is the sort of thing you can do with yours if you want to go down. So we could pick Gateshead, we could pick Newcastle, say, well, let's look at Jesmond Dean, let's look at Leazes Park, let's look at Town Moor. We could also then say, well, actually, let's do that over the last 12 months. So what's happened over the last 12 months? In the last calendar month. Okay, so we can see it's the last calendar month for this. So there's a lot of information going in there. So in theory, that should be 4. And then I was thinking, well, we've got to work this out, because the question really is going to be, at the last event, and this is where the question comes. So at the last event, which given that parkrun is every Saturday, so is event a parkrun day, a date that a parkrun could take place on, and an event may or may not take place at that particular location. Yeah? So we had an interesting one last week, okay, which is why we now have last here. So if we went to last, we can see we're talking about 9th of July. Yeah. In Newcastle, we had 2 events took place there. So we had 2 events cancelled in Newcastle. Town Moor and Leazes Park cancelled. So we had our advance percentage was 50%. So I thought, right, that's probably right. And the reason why I was saying that is because we could go down the last week route, and I was thinking, well, do we do just what's happened in the last 6 days, last in the current week? But then I thought, well, what happens when you have exceptional parkrun? Which, for those of you who don't know, parkrun allows every country to have 2 extra parkruns that aren't necessarily on a Saturday. And those extra parkruns can be on New Year's Day, so the 1st of January, or a local national day. So in the UK, we have Christmas Day. So we have a parkrun on the 25th of December. Now, some events will run on the 25th of December and the 1st of January, as well as any that would fall in between. So as well as the 30th that might fall, or the Saturday between those. Some will do neither, some will do one. How does that all fit into this? Which is why I thought, well, last probably is going to help, isn't it? If we go last, we can then say, right, last is a date that a parkrun could have taken place on. And by could, what we're doing is we're using a law of averages. So we're saying, what's the latest date that we have an event in the table for? Because given the amount that we've now got with 20, it's more than likely that hopefully one should take place on there. We will have some exceptional times, like if we have exceptionally bad weather coming across the country and they're all cancelled, potentially should that be, well, they're all cancelled, that was not a parkrun day. That was my logic. Let me know down below if you feel that's wrong. You know, should we be doing something else? Should we be getting the logic to work out ahead of time? This is the calendar table. These are dates that parkruns can take place on. This is when we would expect it to be. Has it taken place? Yes or no? And honestly, there are so many ways that this can work or not work, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's not a case of, oh, we've done it wrong. We just need to think through what the right thing to do is with this. So anyway, we've got that. I've given you the logic for it. So the question was then, well, actually, how would you write your measures for all this? So if we go through back to Power BI desktop, because of course we need to write these things, okay, we get to some of these things which were just problematic, shall we say. So I was experimenting initially with this latest, which is where I thought, well, we can do this. And this is where I was saying, well, what's the latest event for any event? Which again, so for those two, it would be from the 2nd of August as opposed to the 9th when everything else was. Is that the right way to go? And I sat down and thought, well, what do we do? Is this the right one? Is this the right one is the big question I've got. Yeah, it is. So we wrote some DAX for it. Okay, and again, I'm not the best. I really don't like this. This is very much what I would consider first pass DAX. That's something. So one of the things I wanted to do was to work out kind of the E key just to be simplest, which is the event key, which is why we've done it this way with 2 add columns. So we're going through and we're saying, let's summarize columns for the tracked event location ID. So we want a row for every location ID. And then we want to get the max event number. So we got the event and the max event number to then build an E key table. So we then got the E keys for the maximum event, and the E key that's the event ID plus the event number. So we kind of got with a little underscore between them. So it gives us a primary key for the events table. We can then go through and say, right, let's go and calculate the registered finishes for where the E key equals the E key. So it works, it does the job, and it's pretty quick as well. So it's not a terrible measure, it's just one I'm not feeling as being the most efficient way of doing it. But as I say, one of the things for me is first pass DAX is first pass DAX. Make it work. First pass DAX is first pass DAX. Make it work, and then you can look to optimize it. What we've then done, because I was thinking, well, this isn't right, and that's why I was saying we had 2 that were cancelled, and looking at this is then going to be picking up based on different dates, which didn't feel right. And I was, this isn't right. I don't like it. So I kind of ended up saying, right, well, let's change this to go with last. It's a bit of a simpler measure. Okay, so I've kind of experimented through it. See, I've got this commented out just because I was going through testing a couple of things with it, which is why I was doing. So you can, if you are doing variables, you can go through and you can change the variables, just comment it out, uncomment it. Yeah, so that's what I was doing with this. So what we're doing with this is let's get the max date, which is going to be calculate the max. So the latest date that we have in the event date table, regardless of everything else. So for all events. Once we've got that, we can then calculate the table where we're using summarize columns with the E key. And then so we've gone, if you think what we get through then is we have a table of E keys with the registered finishes, but we're then applying a context to it with this calculate table of where event date equals max date. So it's kind of bringing it down. These are the table that we want. So it's again, it's still an efficient measure for all it looks like it's pulling everything. And then because you're not doing a filter as a function, you're doing it as a calculate table, much more efficient. So we go through, we do that, and then we return those results. So that then allowed me, and again, if we go through here where I've got my hidden tables over here, to look at this and experiment with a few things. We can say, right, we can do this, and you can see I could pick any dates, and it will come back, and the date stays the same. It's going to come through just because of other context filters that we've got on the page. It will go through and do it. We could change those. We could make sure we say, look, we'll bring back from all, but we just want to bring it through. I'm not overly concerned. The context is going to be used will be here. And one of the nice things that I thought, if we zoom in here and look, right, this is what we have, is apart from the all finishes, which we can't filter properly, okay, we can look through and we can say, well, let's see what males have done. And it will update. Let's see what females have done. Yeah, let's see what, let me bring that. Let's see what juniors have done. Let's see what seniors have done. Okay, so we actually get an ability to go through and unpick what's happening with our events. And it gets quite granular. So we can go through and do everything that we would possibly want to do it. And we could get far more granular than we're going to get with our scorecard. But what you need to think through is understanding that scorecards or metric sets or sets of metrics, whatever you're going to call them, can go to whatever level you want. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And in some ways, overloading them potentially isn't wrong, because as long as it's done in a logical fashion, which is again the key thing, we go back to our scorecard. Go back to our scorecard here. Yeah. As long as it's logical. So I know if I expand, say, registered participants, I then know, oh, okay, Newcastle, I can expand that and get to Jesmond Dean, and then potentially under Jesmond Dean, I could do something else. You know, what we would look to do is probably say, right, what we're going to do here is we are going to, look, firstly, let me just double check, make sure scorecards I do have, make sure, yeah, I've got last in here. Okay, so what we would do is we would say, right, so for our scorecard, no, go to our scorecard. My computer's being very odd today. Hit edit, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new goal. Last event. Let's go last event, age grade. Yeah, AG percentage. Okay, we could say that's what we want to do. We want to get the last date, age grade percentage. Shouldn't have hit enter, should I? I keep doing that. What we're going to do is we're going to connect it to the data. We're going to go and we're going to pick scorecard, hit next. Let's go to the last tab and let's pick here. Okay, so we're just going to pick that. The last, why has that got a date filter on it? Should not have that on it. Okay, and connect that. Okay. And then I will give it a start date, just say on track. We could say, well, if it's under whatever, we could do something else with it. Potentially, this is where we could look and we could experiment and we could say, well, is it going up? Is it going down? And this is one of the ones where we need to think through. So what would we do with this? So we've got our latest. We could do a top N and go back and see what was the one before that as well. So it's kind of, you know, these are things to think through what you're going to do with these things. But yeah, so we've got this. We could give it a date, but we're just going to hit save for now. And then it'd just be a case of going in there, create a new sub goal. So this is going to be looking at age grade. So it's going to be our average volunteers. This is going to be our last event, Gateshead, AG percentage. Okay, so again, we go set up, connect to data, pick our scorecard again, hit next. Let's go to the last tab. Let's pick that we want Gateshead for the local authorities. There's our number, connect. Okay, so we've now connected it to it. And we can then say it's on track. We can say the final target, which this is what we could do as well, couldn't we? We could connect this to the data. We say, let's go here, let's go next, and let's go to last. And let's say, well, is it across all of them? Let's pick that. Connect. So it's not really a last, but it's a milestone. So is it above or is it below as a target? And then we can choose to set up a rule. New rule is value greater than 100% of target. Yeah. If it is, it's behind. Or if it is, it's on track. Otherwise, it's, let's say, behind. Okay, we can hit save on that. Save that. Okay, so it'll go through and it's now behind. So we've got that automated. So it's going to pick up based on whatever it is. We can see it's got a percentage on the milestone. We can go through and we can do the rest that way. So we could come through. I wish you could duplicate goals, Microsoft. That'd be really good. So again, we come through to here. We have to go in here. Let's go to new sub goal. Go to last event. Newcastle. Age grade percentage. Let's set that up, connect to data, scorecard, next. Last, Newcastle, there's a value. Oh, it's going to be even worse because it's Jesmond Dean and Denton Dean that were there. And we can go set up the connector data, scorecard, next, last. There we go. Okay. Connect to that. And then we set the rules up, same rules we had before, where it's greater than percentage of target. It is on track, otherwise it is behind. Okay, so it'll be behind as well. Hit save on that. So we can see we've got information here that we could have, that we would want to get to, right? And this is where we can start to piece together what's going on. And we would carry on, keep doing that, build those up. And then because these are all expandable and contractible, if you're not interested in a certain thing, you wouldn't be interested in it. Because these are assigned to somebody, assign it to somebody who's going to take charge of making sure it's maintained. Obviously, for something like this, for a parkrun report, there's not much you can do. But in your workplace report for your shop location, if we were looking at this as national, reporting or at something else, we could assign that to a country manager or to someone else who would then be responsible for that and who would take ownership for us achieving or not achieving as was required. So there's an awful lot that we can do with this, an awful lot that we can unpack, and we can keep building these and keep expanding on these. So I will carry on doing this. You'll see this a few times in the coming weeks, and it will expand and expand and expand until I get to the point going, yeah, this is great and I love it. Okay, but it's always a thought process that goes through, and you think, what's the right logical step to take for this to be? Yeah, does that make sense? Apps, right? Apps. This is going to be the one. Everyone's going to go, apps. So we've got apps, haven't we? So we can look. We've got some apps. We can go through. And we can find one of the app workspaces that we've got. B2B apps one. So we've got an app here, included an app. Yes and no. Yeah. So we can see something's going on with this. We understand that. It's interesting. They're different. The question that you will have here, right? And this is one of the things that is annoying with apps, and even Microsoft kind of go, okay, we kind of didn't do this right. Audiences, okay? App audiences are just really problematic. Now, one of the things that you have within app audiences that probably isn't necessarily talked about enough is you've got this allow people to build content, okay? Build is what you need if you want someone to be able to connect to your semantic model with, say, Excel spreadsheets or with Power BI desktop. And it used to be that was it. Well, it didn't used to be. That was the reality of it. So in the event, for example, that I was building, like we've got here, this app for East, West, South region people, we've got kind of a scorecard dashboard that's been built here. Okay. And, I don't want to rework what this all was, but you could turn around and say, well, this isn't going to be right. Or we want to put in conditional formatting or something else to make sure that you're only able to see what we want you to see. So in my professional opinion, I've seen too many people jump to role-based access as the quick solution that they need to put in place. And the issue with that is that once you go down that route, you've sliced it a particular way. If you then decide, well, we need to slice that way as well, it can become very complicated very quickly, and you end up with lots of roles or trying to work out ways to have duplicated or multiple roles to work with it, which honestly, you can find very difficult very quickly. Not to mention, every time you go down a role-based access route, you find you have got to add additional elements to it because you have to make sure you test that the updates aren't going to break role-based access. And then you can't test role-based access properly from a user perspective because anybody who's in your team will have workspace access, which bypasses role-based access. And it means you need to enroll support from people in the business in the different roles to test a couple of them and make sure it works. It becomes problematic. Nothing wrong with it if there's a hard requirement. What you can often do is if people don't need build access, so if I'm going to give a report to all my people in store 6 in Newcastle, access CR their report pack. We go and say, right, we built a report for a store, we're just going to say, right, this is going to go to store 6. Put a report filter in, report level filter, filter it to store 6, hide the filter, don't give any of them build access. Okay, here's the report. They don't need anything else, and that will work fine for them. And because it's locked back down, they've got a problem. It's one of those things that seems to be kind of the workspace or the use case that audiences was invented for. But you're stuck. You can only have 10 audiences. So as long as you've got less than, say, 7 stores, because you're going to need a management report, you're going to need any, you're fine with your audiences that way. But yeah, it's, it's the audiences side has never really worked. But anyway, the build is the thing that I'm interested in. So it used to be, because unless you had build, you couldn't really ask questions of the data, because to ask questions of the data, it needed to build content to feed back to you. Is that the case with Copilot? Now, in terms of my usage of Copilot in Power BI, it's limited. Okay, I've not seen enough of it. And again, because we're not subscribing to Fabric capacity, we're using trial bits of Fabric, largely because, we're not a production area and there's a cost associated with that. And I'm not heavily enough, or I'm not heavily invested enough in the Copilot features yet to think we need to do this to really get proper testing done with this. So proper testing would be going beyond just what 1 or 2 people can do. And those are things that we really haven't seen enough of. The push and push and push that Microsoft are doing for Copilot terrifies me in the world of Power BI, given that if your Power BI tenant or Fabric capacity that you're running is then also obviously also hosting all your Power BI related Copilot queries, how much usage is that going to get? And what's the impact of that going to be as various users interrogate the data? And the real world of that, I'm never going to be able to sample. I could put a few things in, we could put synthetic load in, but I'm not going to see what happens in a real world business on the first of the month when line managers, when store managers, when area business managers all look at things and say, oh, what happened there? What happened there? How did that work? I don't know. But one of the things I've seen with the org apps, it doesn't seem to mention build permissions yet, has that changed is, I guess, my question. Is it just now an assumed permission that everyone will have build by default? Which, given what I've just said about role-based access, really concerns me, because currently it's a nice way of making sure here is very much your on rails, we control everything that you see view, which there are definite requirements for that. But if doing that prevents Copilot from working, are Microsoft going to allow that to remain current as the way it's going to go with these org apps? And I don't know. I genuinely don't know, so I'm putting it out there. I don't know. If you do know, if you find out, let me know down below. I'm sure other people would love to know too. Okay. So we've built our scorecard. We're starting to update our scorecard. The DAX statements that go in are key. Okay. And honestly, you will find you write tons and tons of DAX as your semantic models grow and expand. And you can see for mine, there's lots there. One of the things we should do at some point is really go through and have a look at some of them, trim it back as well, because I'm sure I've got duplicate measures in there, and that'll be one of the things that I should do with the VPAX files, go through and look, have I got duplicates? Things like that are what you need to do as you go further forward with your DAX measures. You're also now starting to use folders, so folders a lot more if you place them in folders. We've also mentioned with field parameters that we can start to put field parameters into a logical structure as well. So those can appear in a folded structure. So there's a hierarchy to them, again, to simplify what's going on. And as we build these hierarchies, we then need to start thinking through as a business and from a consumer perspective, how are our colleagues going to access report content, to use it, leverage it, and make the most out of everything that we're putting together for them? Yeah. So again, these are things that for me and working as a consultant that we do day in, day out with our clients. We are always sitting down with them, always working through them. And most importantly as well, we're looking and trying to say, well, look, if you are going to go down the RBAC route, that's fine, not a problem. I'm quite happy to do it for you. But in my practical experience, probably of the 7, 8, 9, 10 plus various Copilot, not various Copilot, various RBAC solutions that I've delivered in the real world, I think it's only, I could probably count maybe 1 or 2 that have really been needed. You know, off the top of my head, I know when I did some government work in COVID, we needed it because it needed to be restricted to manage who was actually going to access that report content. There were proper reasons for it. But a lot of the time it's just because, well, I don't want somebody to see this from another area, but then you're going to all sit in a meeting presenting, everyone's got the same data. Here's my PowerPoint deck with my Power BI content now in it, you can see. So is there a need to say you can't see my Power BI report? Yeah, I get it, I understand, but I think for a lot of people, report level filters will do it and just hide it and just don't give people build access unless they really need it. Yeah, champion. For now though, stay safe, take care, ta-da.